Thank you all for joining. I appreciate the commitment to get on a webinar and learn about these exciting STEAM programs. We'll try not to take too much of your time. We want to leave quite a bit of time for questions, and as Ben mentioned, you can type them into the chat box as well. We're going to give you a brief program overview. We're going to talk about internship experiences in 4 different North American cities. We'll talk about those cities as well, so you can differentiate between those 4 cities. And the second half, we'll get a little bit more into the details, and we'll talk about housing, how an internship placement actually works, what you will experience during the placement process, as well as even during parts of the internship. We'll talk about costs, and we'll talk a little bit about next steps. So the Academic Internship Council has partnered with the International Knowledge Center and Gen Next, but I wanted to give you a brief background of who we are. We're not, we have been around actually 33 years, since 1984 with a first placement. We had a student from the Boston area get placed in London, and since then over 30,000 students in more than 13 countries where we have done internship placements. We work with organizations like universities or the International Knowledge Center or Gen Next to develop customized programs where they can then share those programs with their students and participants and meet the unique needs of those particular students. You can see I have highlighted in red the 4 cities we're going to talk about today, North American cities: Boston, New York, San Francisco, and Toronto. We operate in other cities as well. And Ben has already mentioned 2 of our on-site team are here to talk about their particular cities and some of our other cities too. But I think it's important for you to know that in all of our cities, we have full-time staff that are there to support not only the student, but the organization as well. We're a nonprofit organization. We're part of a larger organization that is also a nonprofit organization. So at the bottom bullet point on this slide, you can see our acronym as well. We're known as AIC, and our larger parent organization, nonprofit organization, is CIEE. So in working with Ben and the rest of the team at IKC over the many, many months, we've developed a program, but these are the types of things that are going to be included if you choose to look into one of these programs. We do a placement in a full-time internship. Full-time will mean it'll be over 32 hours a week. Could be 40 hours a week is a regular work week in the United States. And sometimes projects dictate that you have to do a few more hours as well. We provide visa services and guidance as needed. While you are on site during your internship in the evenings or at the appropriate times throughout the week, we offer professional development opportunities, and we'll talk more about those. Anna and Cynthia will talk more about those. When you first arrive, and even pre-arrival, we do an orientation via a webinar, but we do on-site orientations, and then we organize cultural activities in each city as well, just to get you used to that city, and then you will be doing things on your own, I'm sure. Housing is available in all of our cities. We'll talk more about that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you'll have on-site support, not just from your employer, but you'll have on-site support from our site directors as well. And I think this is an important differentiator in this program. You're going to have a cultural experience for sure. You're going to be living and exploring in a brand new city, but you're going to have a work experience. That is what the internship is. And that work experience is going to be different for every single one of you based on the placement. And then what that work experience can turn into is even greater experience in a global workplace. You can take your skills back to India or wherever else you go in the world, and you can apply the skills that you learned. This is how we define what an internship is. It's a short-term, academic, supervised, practical work experience that exposes you to responsibilities in the career field that is of your interest. And this is an important part as well. We'll talk more about this in a little bit, but we have a very personalized placement process. So you have to know what you want to do, what type of skills you want to learn, what type of experience you already have, the types of organizations you might want to work for, the culture of those organizations. And then we work to match you to your specific interests. You can see some of the bullets here. I won't read all of those bullets. But why is an internship experience or this academic plus work experience important? You all know, I think, the world is much more global. Our workplaces are much more global. Even if we never live the city where we grew up in, there's going to be some type of global environment that we'll be working in, whether it be small groups on a work project, or whether it be via webinar halfway around the world. You're going to be working with people from all types of different places, backgrounds, and cultures. You'll develop new skills, and this is always interesting. People think of this a lot as the hard skill. They're going to learn a technical skill, or they're going to learn a software, or something along those lines. And yes, you're going to learn those new skills, but you're also going to learn quite a few soft skills, how to actually be a professional in the workplace that's comprised of people from all over the world. You're easily going to increase your knowledge. When you're working for 40 hours a week in the field that you're interested in, your knowledge of that field and that industry is going to increase exponentially. Hopefully, we can't guarantee this, but it's up to you. You're going to develop your professional network, and this is critical as well. You're going to meet people that you'll know for the rest of your life, and whether it be via LinkedIn or some other type of social, or become a great friend, you're going to have this network that you're going to develop. These are the offerings. There's 2 different STEAM programs through the International Knowledge Center. Both take place in the summer. The biggest difference between the 2 programs are, one is a 6-week long program and the other one is a 12-week long program. You can see the dates on the screen. This is for the summer of 2018. If any of you are looking for the summer of 2019, the dates would be somewhat similar. We'd look at the calendar and then probably adjust the dates by a day or 2. But you can think for this summer of 2018, the arrival day would be a June 3rd, whether you're there for the 6-week or the 12-week program. Depending on the visa and your plans, you could arrive a little bit earlier if you wanted to travel in the United States and then, or Canada. But you would arrive in your internship city, Toronto, Boston, New York, or San Francisco on June 3rd. Departure date, it's actually should just say internship end date, really, because you don't necessarily have to leave. Your internship would end on July 13th or July 14th for the 6-week program, and August 24th or August 25th for the 12-week program. And again, depending on the visa, you can stay, potentially travel if you wanted to travel and explore other cities. The program, the STEAM program on offer is in these 4 North American cities: Toronto, New York, Boston, and San Francisco. So let's talk about those cities a little bit. I'm going to introduce you to Cynthia Singer-Riordan. She is our site director in Boston, has been with us for quite a while, and she's going to talk to you about Boston and about San Francisco. Cynthia.
Hi, everyone. So like Chris said, I work out of the Boston office and work on all of the program components related to Boston programs. So if you decide to come to Boston, I will meet you, as well as my colleague, Brooke Beeland, who also assists with all program-related activities, including internship placements. You know, you've probably heard of Harvard and MIT, and maybe Boston University, but we also have a pretty robust business sector, and as I mentioned, startup economy. But when you think about the different industries that includes, I thought it would be helpful to sort of highlight some of those. So the arts definitely stand out as an area. There's a lot of different arts communities here, and also activities, both visual and performing. And then the business economy is really related to, I would say, support of general business operations, as well as strategy, and also some finance, and definitely some fintech startups. And then communication and marketing are pretty large here as well. And when you think about communication and marketing and the types of activities that involves, it's a lot of digital that happens here, and sort of cutting edge in the technology space. And so really looking at that side of communication and marketing, and really thinking about the types of industries that they support. So since there is a lot of sciences and technology here in Boston, biotech, life sciences, a lot of that can support those areas. Of course, healthcare and education is big here, as well as social work. So there are a lot of nonprofits dealing with all different types of social issues. And the other key piece is that Boston is the seat of government for the state of Massachusetts. So there is our state house here, as well as a lot of different activities happening related to politics and political organization at the local level. So it is really a fascinating place to be, because the state house is right in the city. And so it's just interesting to see how that all plays together here in the city. And of course, technology and engineering, as I mentioned, is another area. Medical sciences, life sciences, and IT also being in that category of really just being robust. And startups happen here and then develop further. And a lot of organizations or companies that are larger tend to have satellite offices here as well, just because of the talent pool that exists in the greater Boston area. So that's a little bit about Boston, and I will pass it over to the next city. A lot of companies, of course, are based in San Francisco as well, because of the talent and the access to the network there of building companies and building the innovation economy as well. And as far as the companies go, of course, Silicon Valley is known for its technological innovation, but San Francisco also has a lot of diverse industries and cultures. Looking at television and film, as well as digital media in general, and they also have a robust technology sector, and environmental clean tech, healthcare, looking at all of the social systems. California is known for having a lot of social networks and social welfare systems. So looking at that, and they have a lot of different support NGOs that look into that. And then arts and culture, and of course, business and finance. San Francisco is a finance hub for the United States, and also specifically for the West Coast. So a lot of ties to Asia with that. A lot of Asian banks that you wouldn't find on the East Coast as much are based or have headquarters in San Francisco as their footprint in the United States. So that is my summary of San Francisco.
Awesome. Thanks, Cynthia. We're going to do a switch over here and introduce you guys to Anna. Anna's our site director in New York City, and she's going to be talking about New York City and Toronto. And then we'll move in to get into some details about how internship placement works in any of these 4 cities. So I would imagine most of you are familiar with New York City, at least from what you see on television or read online or know about the city. So this is not a city that needs any introductions. It's the largest metropolitan area in the United States. It is also the second most educated urban area in the United States as well, next to San Francisco being number 1. So out of the 3 cities, you have 3 of the most highly educated workforces in the United States, with Boston, San Francisco, and New York, which leads to businesses wanting to be there because there's top talent. And then how that ties into you is doing an internship in one of these 3 cities. You're learning from some of that great talent. You're interacting with the student bodies around the city as you go and explore the city and dive into the culture. I think one thing about New York that we can point out here is the true cultural diversity here. There are people from all over the world that live and work in New York City, and they bring part of that with them. So there are pockets in New York, whether it be in Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx, name some of those boroughs, where it's glimpses into the world.
Absolutely. Can you hear me?
There you are, yeah.
Yay! Thank you for that beautiful introduction to New York City. Yeah, we are a salad bowl, not a mixing pot of different cultures, and we are the most walkable city in the U.S. We do have a number of thriving industries. Cynthia mentioned we are not on the top list for per capita of funding for startups, but that does not mean we don't have a thriving startup scene. We like to call ourselves Silicon Alley after our competitor Silicon Valley. And we do have a really good number of companies that are well established in New York in a number of industries. Our strongest industries in New York, represented by the internship programs here, are marketing, communications, and that includes, PR. It includes so many different things, advertising, both on the creative end and on the administrative end, fashion, all sorts of financial services, whether it's working with a large company or a smaller fintech startup, a lot of different roles in business, general business. And that was something that, Chris, you actually mentioned earlier, students having an idea of what they want to learn. And that's the beauty of these internship programs, is that students get to try on these careers and they can figure out what it is that they like to do. So if you are more interested in getting to know business from a general standpoint, we definitely have those opportunities here in New York as well. So you can try on these roles, work in different departments of a larger company and see what that's like. We also work with a lot of nonprofits that both serve the local community here in New York as well as international organizations. The UN has headquarters here in New York City, and we have a number of organizations that we work with that partner with the UN to administer programs. Journalism and publishing are always strongly represented, as well as arts and media. So in the pre-placement meeting, we talk with students about, what it is that they want to get out of the program, what skills they want to use and develop, as well as what skills they can bring to the internship program. So that's all something that we'll go through later as far as the placement process. And I don't think I have control of the slides. There we go.
You don't. I'll hook you up. Here's Toronto, and give us a little 2-minute overview of Toronto, and then we'll get into that placement process.
Yeah, that sounds great. So I've had the pleasure of visiting Toronto several times. I've led our orientation there for the past 2 years, and I have to say, coming from New York, we are very New York centric here in the city, and Toronto has made its way into my heart. It is a beautiful city. It's very safe. It's very walkable. The people are so absurdly nice that coming from New York, I get a little bit on edge, wondering why people are so nice. It's Canada's largest city with 5.5 million people. It is definitely a livable city. It is another city that is very, very diverse. And so you have a lot of different cultures. You know, there's a really great Chinatown in Toronto. There's a really great culinary scene. There's a lot to offer in the city itself, and it has the third largest percentage of immigrants in the world. So almost half of the population of Toronto is an immigrant population, which is really just speaks to the diversity of the people there, and as well as the offering both culturally and in the business realm. So as far as major industries go, these are some of the industries that have been outlined by our team there. Film and media, aerospace and mechanical engineering. I would say for engineering, Toronto is a really strong city, lots of offerings there. Financial services and fintech, healthcare sciences and innovation, energy engineering is also great. Basically a lot of engineering. I know a lot of our engineering students do move towards Toronto. I think there's just a better access to space for all of the labs that require for that industry to thrive. And then also visual arts and hospitality. So it's really a wonderful city, and honestly, I would love to return all the time.
It is. It is. Great. Thanks. So I'm going to turn it over to both Anna and Cynthia. So the way our placement process works, when you work with the International Knowledge Center and you have raised your hand to say that you're interested in doing a STEAM program in New York, or you're interested in doing a STEAM program in Boston, they gather all of your application materials, but then what Ben and his team are going to do literally will connect you with Anna, or connect you with Cynthia, or Ken in San Francisco, or Isabella in Toronto, and they're going to start our placement process. So I think this is the most important thing for those of you that are on the call, and that's why I wanted Anna and Cynthia to kind of describe the placement process, because they might do it just a little bit differently. So maybe we'll start with you, Anna, because we've got you on now.
Sure.
And you can kind of explain and I'm going to skip over housing. We'll come back to housing, but I'll explain, if you can explain the placement process, and then Cynthia, you can kind of jump in, and then once Anna's done, kind of fill in some other areas the way you do it.
Sure. So our placement process, as Chris mentioned, our cities are very different, but the placement process is pretty standardized throughout our different sites. And so what that starts with is you getting accepted into the program. And so once you've gotten all of the necessary paperwork in to be accepted, and you're introduced to the site director, then we're going to take you through a number of steps. And that's to make sure that we're really understanding your goals for the program. And so we're partnering to meet those goals. So the first thing you'll do is you will answer a questionnaire. It's an online questionnaire, and that will really get you thinking about, okay, what is my future going to look like in my career? How does this program fit into that path? And what are the things that I'm bringing to the table? What past experiences do I have to contribute? And also, what do I want to get out of it? I often ask students in the pre-placement meeting, if at the end of your internship, when you're updating your resume, what do you want your resume to reflect that you have learned and worked on through your time in your internship? So that's getting all of that into writing. You'll also upload your resume. We work with students from all over the world, and we want to get your resume to look like the US style resume, and we work with you on that. So that means it's going to be, condensed to one page. There's not going to be any confidential information on there that is, sort of a no-go in the US. So no birth dates, nothing about, citizenship and things like that, things that kind of are red flags to HR teams, and we work with you on all of that. So it's not anything you need to know in advance of our meeting. And so once you've uploaded your questionnaire and your resume, then we will have a one-on-one meeting. It's called our pre-placement meeting, and that's over Skype. And so that's it's a very casual meeting where we talk about all the things that you've written down, putting into words, into oral language, what it is that you're coming onto the internship for. So getting that into a conversation, and then we will follow up that conversation with an email that will summarize that. So putting into writing what it is that you are looking to come and do in your internship. And so that's a way for you to really, throughout the process, get really clear about what it is that you want to accomplish in your time in the internship. And I will say, you know, we are very, we're good at our jobs. All of us have been doing this for a number of years, and we're able to really get to the root of what it is that you're trying to get at. So don't feel like you need to have all of the details. In fact, the more flexibility you have, the more you're able to learn in the process, because you're not sort of tunnel vision towards one goal of learning one specific task. And we work with you throughout your time here as well, you know, in the city and the internship. So we're always here to support you in that way. Once all the pre-placement stuff is out of the way, I'm in the middle section here. We're working with employers, so we're working on the matching process. We have really the same care that we take to talk to students in the pre-placement front-loading end. We take that same care to talk to employers. So we're talking to them about, okay, what projects are you working on? What skills does the student need to have? How much supervision are you offering the student? You know, not all internships are created equally, and not all students are created equally. Some require more supervision than others. So really taking all of those factors into account, and then you will have an interview. So it'll be another Skype call with your employer. And so that's an opportunity for you to make sure that the internship fits in with what you're interested in, and for the employer to make sure that you're a right match for them as well. It's great professional development to work on your interviewing skills. And I will say that with the intentional process that we offer, most of the times, I would say 9.5 out of 10 times, the first interview you have is the internship that's going to match your interest closely. This is a linear process where each internship opportunity is addressed one by one. So if that first one is not a match for whatever reason, either on your end or the company's end, we're moving on to the next one, and we're not revisiting that first interview. So we work really closely with you on all of that. We try to be as transparent and open in communication as possible to make sure that you have all the necessary information before you come on the program. Now, assuming that you need your visa for the internship, all of our international students for the US come over on J1 visas. It's a similar visa in Toronto as well. And what it requires is it's a dual application that is half of it is your side of the application and half of it is the employer side of the application. So once your internship is confirmed, we work with you to submit your application. I will mention also for the US, your J1 application will come with healthcare. We have a very complicated healthcare system here, and you're legally required to have healthcare. So we make sure that healthcare is included in your J1 visa for the duration of your program. And Chris touched in a little bit. If you're planning on traveling before or after the program, we can work with you on those dates to ensure the coverage extends to those dates as well, as it's really important to have, especially with a lot of uncertainty in our healthcare system currently. Once you arrive, it looks like this last point here, we do the visa paperwork, we do midpoint review with both you and your employer, and we do a lot of events on the ground as well. So continuing professional development, working with you on how to make the most of your internship, how to work with different work styles and communication styles, how to network and build that professional network that is so important in an ever evolving global work landscape, and really support you both personally and professionally in your time here on internship.
Thanks, Anna. And Cynthia, anything you want to add in a minute or two?
No, I think Anna was pretty thorough. I don't have anything to add.
Okay. And I'll just recap it by saying to all of you, if you go through this process, it is a one-on-one process. So you're going to be working directly with these site directors. the more open and honest you are with what you want and the skills you have and the skills you want to gain, the better they can match with an employer. How about a quick minute on housing, Cynthia? And then I know, Ben, we're running a little bit behind schedule, so maybe we can just jump to the end after we talk a bit about housing.
Sure, I'll be quick. So the housing will be at a different location, of course, in each site, but we tend to have a standard sort of that we will have every student on the program make sure that they have, so that you'll a double room. So that's the standard, is to have a shared room. So that means a shared bedroom, not just an apartment that's shared, but a shared room, bedroom, and then having a common kitchen and a bathroom. And typically the accommodations are always in a US style residence. So it could be university housing, or it could be another like independent housing provider that typically works with students. Always located in a more residential neighborhood with public transportation access, so that you can get to your internship site. And we tell all students that they should anticipate, I would say, closer to 60-minute commute, probably, at least in Boston. It's very similar to what locals do, even if they live, you know, in the city center. It's a little bit shorter, but if, you know, most people have a commute of, I would say, at least 45 to 60 minutes. I would say 45 is probably more average than 30. And then I think the one key point of all all of our housing is that we try to have it in a vibrant neighborhood as well. And then students really enjoy being able to explore the city in multiple locations, both where their housing is and also where their internship is, and getting to see the city in between. That's all I have to say about that.
All right, easy peasy. One point that I'll emphasize, and that's what this slide talks about that you are looking at now, is that we can work with just about any interest in any field of study. You heard Anna talk about engineering, and Toronto has a really good mix in engineering. But if you really love Boston, there are some engineering opportunities in Boston or San Francisco or New York as well. So I think it's important for you to know that regardless of your interests, we'll work with you. And if for some reason we're having difficulty, we're going to be very upfront and very open with you. If it's a really niche or very, very unique thing, let us know, give us a lot of time to work with you, and we'll see what we can come up with. We've talked about this a little bit. This is continuing to say you're going to have ongoing support, and you're also going to have evaluations done by employers. We call it the midterm or the halfway point of your internship evaluation, and then you'll have a final evaluation from your employer as well. And we can talk more about that if there's major questions, but I think it's pretty straightforward what an employer evaluation would be. So you can work with the International Knowledge Center and the team on the ground in India to really dig deep into these fees. You can see at the top of the screen, there's a website or a link to a website. You can copy that down and you can get a thorough explanation of the fees there. The fees are everything we've talked about, this personalized placement process, this ongoing support, the orientations in the cities, et cetera, et cetera. That's what's all included in these fees. But I want to be real clear about what you'll need in addition. You'll need transportation to and from whichever city you're in to the city you're going to do your internship in. You're responsible for that. You're responsible for your transportation within the city, whether it's a subway or a bus, or if you're lucky enough to be able, to do a 15-minute walk to where you're working, you're responsible for getting there each day. And then also any of your basic living expenses. So your meals throughout your time on your internship, you're responsible for. If you have more specific questions than that, again, you can reference the website at the top of this page, or whomever you're working with or talking to at the International Knowledge Center. I'll just do another recap. I think it's always good to reiterate how the process works in a lot of different ways. So the first step of the process is going to be with the International Knowledge Center, and you're going to be talking with them, getting your questions answered by Ben and his team. And then if you choose to apply for the STEAM program, you're going to apply via the International Knowledge Center. They're going to make sure your application meets all the criteria, and I'm sure they've already talking to you about that. If not, they will as you follow up. And then once you have submitted your application and the International Knowledge Center has accepted your application, that's when the handoff comes to one of the site directors like Anna or Cynthia or Ken or Isabella. And they'll get your application packet, and then they're going to schedule, they're going to email you or contact you somehow with that questionnaire that you can start filling out, obviously your resume or CV. And then they're going to schedule that pre-placement meeting. That's when they just talk with you and get to know you based on that questionnaire and what you really want in your internship. Once they finish that pre-placement meeting, they're going to go to work with their employers, and they take all the knowledge they have about you and what you want, and then they work with the various employers to get a match. Once we have a match, you're going to do an interview with that employer, and that employer has the right to say, no, you're not the right person, or you have the right to say, nope, you're not the exact right employer for me. Hopefully that's not going to be the case. What we experience most often is that it's a terrific interview by both sides and they both want to work together. And once you decide that that's where your placement is, and you've been offered that placement by the employer, we continue to work with you via email or what other forms of communication on the visa processes, the housing processes, and everything else you need to do to ensure that you arrive at your internship site with everything you need.
All right, so let me just jump into the questions right away. The first question I see here, does it require an English proficiency test?
That's a great question. We assume English proficiency. All of our placements will be done in an English speaking environment.
So
you go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. So for the J1 visa, there's 2 sections for the English proficiency, and that is if you have something like a TEFL score or any of those other scores, you can upload that information. If not, we can conduct an interview with you and fill out the necessary forms. So you don't need to take a test specifically, but your level of English proficiency will determine what sort of internship you're placed into, because if you're doing something that involves really technical English skills, for example, if you're in journalism or marketing PR, where you need to have a really good grasp on the English language, then that's going to color what internships you qualify for. And we, again, to Chris's point, we're really upfront and open with the students in our pre-placement meeting. So if we're conducting the pre-placement meeting and you're stating an interest in something that we don't feel your skills are up to par with, we will let you know. And what our goal is to get you into an internship that will get you onto that path. So if you want a high level internship and your language skills are not at that level, we'll get you something a little bit lower so you can develop those skills and hopefully qualify for that internship in the future.
Great. Thank you. Here's another question. This is from, so this is regarding a specific program. This is Masters in Engineering Management. And a student wants to know what kind of an internship would best orient him in support of that.
Yeah, I think, that's a really specific question that would, again, the internship would really depend on the student's past experience as well as their education. I can't say off the top of my head without reviewing the student's resume, and I think that would be the same for all of our directors. We would have to see a resume or some sort of document that shows us their qualifications, and then we could speak better to the opportunities available. So again, we're happy to talk to the students and have those, if a student's unsure about their specific qualifications, we're happy to advise on that.
Okay, perfect. And I just want to add that we're also having questions coming in through our WhatsApp platform. So not all questions would be visible on your screens. That being said, I have another similar question from another student, but as explained, it doesn't matter which program you're coming from. You can be, a computational biologist or, any other, area. But all of these are streamlined and customized based on your particular interest. And once you reach out to us and you get in touch with, the city director, they'll take over and, make sure you find that particular field of work.
Can I add one thing to
Sure.
this?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so the other thing I just want to sort of highlight that I don't know that we've really emphasized during the placement process is just that, and how that intake process takes. During that meeting, when we meet with students in the pre-placement meeting, we'll typically talk through 3 different areas of interest that the student's interested in. So given their major, like how would that be applied in industry in 3 different ways, or what would their interests be in doing that? And then that gives us the flexibility. So if for some reason we're not able to find the first thing that we talked about, we have other backup options. So I would say that typically students that are successful in the placement process and throughout the program have some level of flexibility in their interest areas as far as how they might apply their major. So rather than thinking rigidly, like if someone wants to do one specific thing and only that thing, it might be a bit more challenging, especially if it's a highly technical or specialized field. So maybe thinking broadly, because we're looking at, our purpose is really skill development, and that can be applied in many different ways. So I think if students can think about their major and what they want to do in the future in broad terms, that usually is helpful in the conversation during the pre-placement meeting when we can talk through the different possibilities.
Great. Thank you. Another question is this internship purely academic, or does it have industrial training work too?
So I'll take that, and then Cynthia and Anna, you can jump in if you need to add to it. These are work placements. We are called the Academic Internship Council. Oftentimes we partner with universities and students are earning credit as well. In this particular instance, your STEAM program is a work experience. So you will be on a J1 visa and working 32 hours or more per week or with a company or with an employer in your field of interest based on that pre-placement meeting. So these are real life applied work experiences, and that could take numerous forms. Again, you could be writing copy if you were in marketing and PR. You could be doing research if you were in marketing and PR for that copy. You could work on a very specific technical project potentially. So again, that's why that pre-placement meeting is so important to us in terms of figuring out exactly what it is that you're looking for from the experience.
Yeah, and we often say that the city is your classroom. Some of the soft skills that Chris was talking about earlier, with communication and leadership and things like that, you develop. You also develop skills on what it's like to navigate a new global city. All of our sites are very global environments with varying degrees of ease to navigate these cities. So really learning how you respond to challenges and things like that. So there's definitely a great deal of learning that goes on in the program, whether there's a course associated with your internship or not.
All right, I have a J1 specific question. What is the length of the J1 visa? And what if students want to travel before or after? Will the J1 be a date to date? What's the time frame, the visa time frame?
I can take
Cynthia.
that one.
Sure.
Yeah, I was waiting for Cynthia to come in. She's our longtime J1 expert. But so the J1 visa, so there's two categories of J1 visa. There's the intern visa and the trainee visa. So whether you are, whether you're still enrolled or within a year of graduating, you'll be on the intern visa. If you have, I think it's 2 years experience in your field, then you can come over as a trainee. So the maximum for both of those is, so J1 internship visa, the maximum is 18 months, I believe, and then 12 months for the trainee, or vice versa. We never have students go quite that long, so I'm not sure what the maximum is, but it's 12 to 18 months. And then there's 30-day grace periods before and after the program start and ends. And so you are able to travel for cultural exploration 30 days before your internship starts and 30 days after. And if you're planning to do that, I will say definitely let us know in the pre-placement meeting for a number of reasons. One, that means we need to have your visa paperwork completed in advance if you're planning on traveling before the program starts. And also we want to set those dates on the application for the dates that you're planning on being here, so that you have that health insurance coverage while you are traveling for cultural exploration. So if whatever dates you're thinking, even if it's just an abstract thought, like, oh, I was thinking of coming 2 weeks earlier and visiting my family in this, city, definitely let us know, because we need to take all of those timelines into consideration for visa processing. I think I answered the question, but if I did not, please let me know.
I think that was good, and we can always come back to this.
Yeah, but it will be, the visa will be marked with an end date. So if the internship ends on August 25th, that date will be there. If you know you're going to travel, you have 30 days prior or post August 25th, so to speak. But with each person, depending on their city too, they can talk with each particular student then.
Okay. Here's a basic question. On what basis is the interview considered?
So for us, really, once we start meeting with students, we kind of assume that you're have had a baseline acceptance to the program. And then I think really what we'll be looking at is to make sure that we feel that you can be successful in the program based on your language skills and interest areas for the internship, just to sort of talk, when we talk through all of those different pieces of your background and what you're looking to do during the pre-placement meeting. And then with employers, it will really vary based on employer. So, typically if you're being asked to do an interview with an employer, they've already screened your resume and have some, interest in speaking with you. And then that interview will, depend on the organization. I would say that questions that students ask, the questions that they're asked, and how well prepared students are ahead of time going into the interview. So we'll do as much as we can to help coach students before the interview, but a lot of success will actually depend on how much students are preparing on their own for those interviews.
Yeah, the employer interview is a formal interview with that employer. Students need to be prepared.
All right, let me go to questions about paid internships and stipends. I see a lot of questions here. I'm going to club these questions together. How many people generally get a paid internship? And can you help us target these companies specifically?
I can give you the high-level overview, and then maybe each of the directors can talk about their various cities. When we work with students, we advise them to be prepared for an unpaid internship. Our goal is for those students to learn, work in a job, work on a project, enhance their skills within their industry, as well as their cross-cultural skills. And many times, the majority of these experiences are going to be unpaid. There are instances where employers will offer a stipend. That's not something that we negotiate. That is between the employer and the student, and it may or may not happen. I think that's the easiest way to say it. And you guys, Cynthia and Anna, can add a little color if you want.
Sure. So yeah, absolutely. What Chris said is correct. We deal with so many industries and we deal with so many students in so many cities that our umbrella policy is, students prepare for unpaid internships. We have had students receive compensation in New York City, and that's never something we know in advance. And I will say, in the internship world, the subject of compensation is really controversial because it could mean anything from an hourly rate to some sort of travel stipend or meal stipend, and we've had students receive everything in there. Unfortunately, we are not able to target companies specifically for their level of compensation, and that's because of what Chris mentioned. Our focus is getting students internships that match their professional goals and really set them up for future success. And I think focusing on an internship that's going to offset the cost of your living here is missing the bigger picture of setting you up for your future career. So the other thing, I don't know, maybe Cynthia can talk about a little bit more in Boston. We never know in advance what the students are going to receive. It's something that they get as a surprise. As J1 students, you are eligible for payment. So that's something to know. It's not a work visa, so you can't not get a part-time job on top of your internship. And we've had domestic students do that, and we don't recommend it. Your time is going to be really, just really split in too many directions. So if you are committing to the program, really committing to that 6 or 12 weeks of focusing on your future and really putting into practice what you've learned in school and seeing how that fits into your future career path. I just want to add that for the J1 visa, you're expected to have $1,000 a month for the duration of your program, and that can be provided in a number of ways, either a printout of a bank statement within the past 3 months, or you have one of your parents or guardians sign off on a letter saying that they will support you for $1,000 a month. And I would say in New York, for student budgeting purposes, on a student budget, you can survive on $1,000 a month here in New York City specifically.
All right, great. So a question that we again hear often from students during the first week of internship, or during the first few weeks, the student feels that this was not the best for them. Do they have an option of changing companies at that point?
That's a really great question, and it's one we hear more often from employers than students. So that's the reason we take so much care on the front end of making sure we understand the student's needs, the student understands the company's needs, the company understands, all of this being in agreement. And with the J1 visa, as Cynthia mentioned, there is a training plan. And so the internship is very project oriented. So students know in advance, they know as they're going through this process, what it is that they're going to be working on. Now, that's not to say that, company needs and company projects don't shift. And if that happens, we're absolutely happy to work with students to refocus the internship in a way that is going to meet their interest. We've never, in New York, in my 4 years here, we've never had a student change internships. That's not to say that we haven't had to refocus any internships, but it's really, it's a lesson in professionalism. It's a lesson in really accepting the challenge and rising to it. And so if there is a situation that you do need to switch internships for, and there could be a number of reasons why that is, then you have, with the J1 visa, you have 30 days to switch internships. So that really, again, will go back to the length of your program. So if you're here for 6 weeks, chances are that internship is going to be where you are, because we don't have that time to switch internships. If you're here for 3 months, we can have that conversation, but our office in New York, and I think we've had conversations about this, sort of company-wide, we're here to help you deal with challenges, and we're here to help you overcome them, not to run away from them by switching internships.
All right, thank you. This is another common question we get. Will students be given complete details about the companies, and how reliable are these companies? I guess one of the fears that students have is that in most internships, they pick the company. But in this case, they're going without the knowledge of which company they're going to be at. And these are obvious concerns.
Sure, I can speak to that. So we always start in New York. We always start with the companies that are sort of, we call them our all-stars internally in our office, and those are the companies that we've worked with term after term for these internship programs. Were companies that we know offer great hands-on learning experiences. So what happens is in the interview, once we set the student up for the interview, we'll send the student an email, and it'll have an interview prep in there. And then it'll also have all the information that we have about the internship, about the company, and about setting the student up for a successful interview for the internship. So we front load the information as much as we can, and we set the student up for a successful interview. As far as the companies, we do personal vetting with the companies. If it's a new company we're working with, we have really extensive conversations about, the level of supervision, the projects, and how they will support the students. And in some cases, we will visit the company to make sure that everything is set up. If it's a J1 employer and it's a new company, then CIEE actually hires a third-party contractor to go visit the company to make sure that all of the logistics are setting the student up for success. So it's not something that is just kind of thrown together haphazardly. There's a lot of check marks, and we take care on AIC side, on CIEE side, and the students should also come prepared with their own questions as well, to make sure that it is a company they're interested in working with for 6 or 12 weeks.
And I'll also add, while not necessarily every site does this, many of our locations have for lack of a better word, it's an acknowledgement. So it's a piece of paper, and it has the company's name and address and email address. But the key thing on this acknowledgement, this internship acknowledgement, is list what the responsibilities and what the work the student's going to do. And the student then signs off or acknowledges that that is what they've signed up for. So again, they're going to know their internship, they're going to know the organization, and they're going to interview with that organization and be able to learn a lot prior to saying, yes, I'm doing the internship. And that's the key thing. You're still in control of your own destiny here. If it's a bad interview or whatever, if something comes up where you don't get a good feeling, you don't have to go and do your internship there. This is prior, okay, during the placement process.
Okay. We also have some PhD students who may be interested. So is this opportunity open to PhD students as well?
And you've heard me say this before, Ben, as well, and you heard Anna and Cynthia reference it. We have to talk with that student, but with our pre-placement process, these are student-centric placements. So we're trying to match the skill level and interest of the student to an employer and the projects available with that employer. And if we can find that match, it doesn't matter if you're an undergrad or a PhD student. What we're looking for is that very personalized process on what that student and participant has as a skill set, as a background, and then wants to gain from their internship. And then from the employer side as well, do they have the right types of position to match that student's skill set and that student's needs? So it's, to me, it's less about PhD, master's, undergrad. It's more about experience and outcomes, what somebody wants to learn, what somebody wants to achieve.
Okay, and students absolutely have to be at least an undergrad student. Is that correct?
Correct.
Great. I think, we've covered most of the questions, and if students have any further questions, you can always feel free to send us an email. You can email me at ben@myikc.com, or you've probably interacted with Sheila at some point already, so you can email her at sheila@myikc.com. And, any questions, we can always, connect you with Chris and his team as well, depending on how detailed your questions are, so we can answer those. Anything to end with, Chris, or anyone else?
I just thank you all for participating and for sending in your questions. I think you can tell by the time we spend on the call that this is really about you and your needs, and we're here to support those things. So please reach out through Ben and my IKC and ask questions, and then we'll get you guys the right answers so you can make good decisions.
Chris and team, this is Girish. I just want to say thank you again for taking the time to do this. To the students, I'm really looking forward to many of you applying. This is an amazing opportunity, and we're really excited to be working with Chris and his team to make this available for you guys. So please reach out to Sheila and our staff in Bangalore or with Ben, and let's make sure that we help you identify the right opportunity for you next summer.